feedback. So I thank you very much. I've adapted the workshop based on what people have asked for. So I'm really happy that you've done that to give me a little bit of direction in what you want to talk about today. I'll start with a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us together to work and to share ways that we think about the general education program here at the university and think of ways that we can bring the Franciscan values forward in our work. And we appreciate the beautiful warm weather, and we appreciate all the blessings that you give us in our lives. Thank you. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit, amen. Do people want to just say a quick hello to each other through Teams? We don't have anyone. It's just John and I here and JP204, and we say hello to you. John, do you want to say hello?
Hi there. David Stellick here. Hello.
On Teams saying hello. You can say your name and what department you're in.
David Stellick, KB Sobel. Hello.
Hello, David.
Hi, it's Bev Mollering over in Kinesiology and Nutrition.
Hi, Bev.
Hi, it's Diana from Sonography.
Hi, Diana.
Hi, Anne, and I am an adjunct with education.
Julie, was that Julie?
Yes.
Yes, great. I think we have two others that are with us. They might have stepped away for a moment, but that's okay. We're recording this, and so we'll just keep going ahead. If it's all right with you, I'll bring us to our PowerPoint. Can you see the PowerPoint? Can someone acknowledge that they see the PowerPoint?
I see it.
Okay, fantastic. So the beginning of the PowerPoint you might have seen already from Sister Anita presenting it, but I promise you I did redevelop it based on people asking for how to develop artifacts related to the GE and how to bring Franciscan values into their teaching. So the beginning of it might look a little familiar, but then the rest of it does change. So we're going to go through here. So it's going to be about the learning outcomes and the purpose of gen ed assessment, and then some nuts and bolts things about the GE assessment, like our schedule, our rubrics, labeling artifacts, what makes a good artifact, and then the mechanics of artifact development, which is the new piece, where we'll spend most of our time in this session. And so these are the Franciscan core curriculum learning outcomes. They're known as, the program itself is a general education program, but we have named it the Franciscan core curriculum. So I'll sometimes call it the one or the other. The generic name is general education. And so these are the learning outcomes themselves. And there is a place where these all exist and you can look at them and get to know them, and I'll tell you where that is. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 10 of them, and we assess 2 of them a year in the winter time. And there's different reasons why we have the learning outcomes and we assess them. Mostly it's because we value them and we want to know how well the students are learning them. We want to help our students to be able to clearly understand what it is that we value in our general education curriculum. And so we state them as learning outcomes. We embed them in certain artifacts or assignments, and we measure the learning of those, and we try to improve if we think that there are certain aspects that they're not grasping. So that we try to find out, well, is it something about the way that the learning is approached in the curriculum? Is something that it's being taught, or is it a way that is the way the assignment can change? Is it the way that the approach that faculty member has can change? What is it about it that can change, that the students might be able to learn it more clearly, or we might be able to measure it more clearly? And then finally, we do it because we're required to do it by our institutional accreditor. So there's a range of reasons why we do this sort of assessment. We do this on a schedule. So we've started assessing these in December of 2020 because it's a rather new curriculum for us. And we did philosophy and theology together, then history or behavioral science and creative arts or literature together. Then we did math or science and digital and information literacy together last year. And then this winter, we'll be doing Franciscan values and Franciscan tradition. And then next year, we'll be doing writing and speaking and leadership and collaboration. So we have new rubrics for all of the learning outcomes up through digital and information literacy. We have new rubrics for those, which can help in writing artifacts. For the other learning outcomes, the last 4, we do not have new rubrics for them. So when a faculty member is going to write their artifact, they'll have to write it based on the language of the learning outcomes. So that is a little bit tricky. I do acknowledge that, but we'll be talking about that today. The last cycle of learning outcomes, we had 16 learning outcomes and we wrote 16 rubrics in 1 year for them. And then we redeveloped 4 of them, and then we redeveloped most of them when we went through assessment. So we really were doing quite well in that. But then we redeveloped all the learning outcomes again in 8 years. And I think we had tired ourselves out with all that rubric writing. And it's all we can do to write them as we go, it seems, in this cycle. Although I wish we could do it a little bit faster for our faculty. The system that we have for doing it does work really well, though, because it's the GE evaluators who adapt the rubric while they're doing the assessment, and I think we're getting a really good quality rubric out of it that we will not have to revise. And then we have this is a really nice, clear guideline that we have. Hello, Natalie. This also exists. I'm going to show you where this all exists in our documents in My Cougar Connection. This is really helpful. This is what someone had asked for, to know if they're teaching a certain class, what learning outcome would be aligned to that class, that therefore they would need to know that they would have be expected to have an artifact for that learning outcome. And so this shows you that for Engage, there's 2 learning outcomes, the Franciscan values and the leadership outcome. And then you can see, you can just go down and see if you teach a certain class, what the learning outcomes are that are aligned to it. So this is what one of the rubrics that are completed, what they look like. They exist we create them in Excel, and then they exist as a PDF version. So this is, they are analytic rubrics. They're assigned numerical values 1, 2, 3, and 4, which work really nicely on a grading scale if you're thinking like that. And they have criterion rows going down the left side. And then there's statements of what the learning looks like at these different levels. So these are used by the GE evaluators when they assess the GE artifacts, but they can also be used to help plan your artifact development. And this is the one for applying Franciscan values, but we had a differently worded learning outcome for applying Franciscan values and for Franciscan tradition in our last general education curriculum. So although we had a learning outcome for it, the rubric will need to be slightly adapted because, and even though it's taught in Engage and Franciscan tradition and social justice and care for creation and capstone, the language of the learning outcome was slightly different, so we will have to change the rubric a little bit. So where is this material found? So it's found in MCC under academics, under general education. I wonder if this link takes us there. It does. Okay, wonderful. So if you go to MCC and you were to go under academics, you see general education here. This is what it takes you to. And it shows you all the material that I just showed you. So there's a description of the general education. There's the learning outcomes here in alphabetical order. This is the same list that you just saw, which shows the classes and the learning outcomes that are aligned to the classes. This is the same schedule for assessment. People will be contributing their artifacts into Canvas all through the years, all through the semesters. So it's not like, oh, we're going to do Franciscan tradition this year, so it's only this year that you contribute artifacts to Franciscan tradition, because that's not the case. When we go and we pull artifacts, we'll pull them out for the past several semesters. So the people will continue to put artifacts into their aligned into their Franciscan tradition Canvas courses all through 2021, 2022, 2023, and we'll be pulling those artifacts out. So really people are contributing all through time. And then we're having consecutive semesters that we pull the artifacts out of, but this is when the assessment is taking place. And that's a different version of it. And then here are the rubrics. So if you wanted to see what the rubric looks like because you're teaching a history or behavioral science or theology or info lit or creative arts, math or science, they're all here. These are the ones that are the good ones. And hopefully then we'll have 2 new good ones for you for Franciscan values and Franciscan tradition in just a few months. So far, so good. You let me know if you have any questions or I need to.
I have a question,
Yes.
Carol. On the PowerPoint for the courses, this is a selfish question, where it says the course and it says capstone.
Yes.
I see the Franciscan values learning outcome and the digital and information literacy outcome. On the webs on SharePoint for capstone, it has 3 outcomes listed.
Really?
It has the writing and speaking to communicate to diverse audiences is another outcome listed there. And I'm just wondering, is it 2 or 3?
I must have made a mistake. All I can say is I must have made a mistake in creating this slide. I will find out for you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. I will find out and I will get back to you. Chances are the website is correct and my PowerPoint is wrong, but I will find out. Because actually we did assess writing, and I think we probably did pull artifacts out of capstone. So I think that it probably does exist in capstone, but I'll get back to you, David. Thank you for bringing that up. There's also something about the labeling conventions to know. Let me see if one of these other slides has it on there. Yes, there they are. When people are working in Canvas and they have, let's say they're teaching a history or behavioral science course, and they have an artifact for their course that aligns to the rubric and to the learning outcome. And let's say it's a research paper number 2. What we ask is that when they have the name of the title of their assignment, they go into the title of the assignment and they place FCC BSS and then a space, and then they have their title, research paper number 2. And that way, when we go into Canvas to look for artifacts that are meant to be pulled for the sampling, we can find them because they've been labeled with this prefix. So we know that this is the appropriate assignment in this course section. So these are all the prefixes. So we ask that so that I don't have to email individual faculty and ask them which assignment they want me to use. Okay? So they just follow a standard convention, which you can figure out pretty easily. Okay, so now we're moving into the part where we're hoping this is going to be helpful about let's make an artifact for class. So Engage has 2 artifacts. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to see that you have the general education outcomes on your syllabus. You're also you're going to have your course outcomes. Your course outcomes for Engage, they're going to be consistent for all Engage course sections. But your course outcomes will be aligned to different course projects that you have, and those are ones that you will determine yourself. The GE outcomes will be aligned to different GE artifacts. Ideally, you would want 1 artifact per outcome because each outcome will eventually have its own robust rubric for it, and it's rather difficult to have one single assignment that will be able to carry the weight of 2 large analytic rubrics and be aligned to both of them simultaneously, unless it's something like maybe the writing rubric and something else, because writing is a technical skill, and I could see where writing would work on a research paper, and then the content of some other learning outcome could be also in it. But for the most part, it's really hard. We've seen an assessment that it's really hard to have 1 artifact be able to cover the content of 2 analytic rubrics for the most part. So then you're going to go and you're going to look to see if there's a rubric for your outcome that's already existing. If yes, then you're going to develop the artifact from the rubric. And you look at the criterion rows for the content, and you're going to use the highest level of achievement. But actually, I should say you'll use the level of achievement that's correct. If it's an Engage class, you'll want to consider what level your students are working at. Are they working at kind of in the middle level of the rubric? Would you expect them to really have the highest level of achievement? If they're working at a capstone level, you'd expect them to be working at the highest level of the rubric. You can see again from the way that the artifacts are placed in the curriculum that some of them repeat. And I wouldn't give us the credit to say that they're really scaffolded through the curriculum. I can't really say that it was that developed because our course sequencing isn't really that considered in that way. But we can certainly say that Franciscan Values appears once in Engage, once in Theo 105. Which is still a first-year class, and then in Care for Creation or Social Justice, and again in Capstone. So at the Capstone level, it'll be at the higher level of the rubric, and at the Engage level, it'll be at the lower level of the rubric. And then if there's no rubric, unfortunately, you have the hard work of trying to develop it from the learning outcome. But I do have a slide here on how to go about doing that. So let's say you only have the learning outcome. The advice I would have would be to take the elements of the learning outcome and separate them. There's usually 3 parts of the learning outcome. So for this one, you have apply the Franciscan values, reflect on one's vocation, and serve the community. Those are the 3 content areas of this learning outcome. And I looked and I saw that for Engage, there's a service project in the class, correct? So one thing to consider when building your assignment is if you want the assignment for this GE, I keep kind of switch between assignment and artifact. An assignment becomes an artifact when it becomes harvested for assessment, but it's really the same thing. An artifact is an assignment. If you want this assignment to be the assignment that's aligned to the service project or not, it doesn't have to be. It's really the faculty's decision, but it could very easily be because it's the learning outcome reflects serve the community. So it seems like to me it would be an easy fit. So I will call it the first element of the assignment, or even if you think about it, the first criteria row of the rubric that'll eventually become would be that students will need to understand the content of the Franciscan values. That at the lowest level, they're going to be needing to understand the content of the Franciscan values. At a more sophisticated level, they're going to need to be able to internalize them because they're applying them to do what? Are they applying them to write a theoretical paper or write a research paper on the Franciscan values? No, they're applying them to reflect on their vocation. So this is sort of an internal learning outcome. So I think that they're going to be doing some, in Bloom's taxonomy, it's like more of a reflective I'm kind of searching for it's not a cognitive, but an affective domain is what it's making me think of. And then element 2, students will need to understand what their vocation may be, right? They're reflecting on their vocation. So at the lower level, they're going to need to understand what their vocation may be. And then at the higher level, they're going to reflect on their vocation in terms of one or more of the values, because they're applying their values to reflect on their vocation, right? I hope you're with me so far. And I'm not just overstating the obvious. And then number 3, they've internalized the values. They're reflecting on their vocation in terms of the values. And then the last thing that they're doing, they're engaging in a service project, and they're reflecting on their values in terms of the service project. And through doing this, their understanding of the values will deepen. So that's how I see this being an assignment and eventually bumping out into a rubric. And the assignment, the project could take many different forms. It would make a really good reflection, but it's going to be a pretty long reflection. This is not a one-page reflection, as you can see. This is, it could be a pre and post reflection. It's at least a 3-page paper, I think, for them to be able to write about all this. It can be one or more of the values. You know, it's your choice. You could have them focus on one value that's the most important to them. It could be focused a little bit more on their vocation, depending on your own personal interest in this class. It could be, if you're interested in teaching them how to present, it could be a PowerPoint presentation, but there would have to be a lot of notes and more analysis or more reflection really in it, so that we can see, there would have to be something in it that the evaluators would be able to look at to show that the student was really doing that reflection. So at this point, I want to take questions or comments, or tell me, does this sort of help give you what you were thinking of in terms of how to write an artifact aligned to this learning outcome for Engage?
Carol, this is helpful. My question is, this is Bev over in Cannes. For the capstone course, if it has 2 or 3 outcomes, are you anticipating us to have 2 or 3 artifacts
Yes. And I'm sorry because I don't know that it seems really fair to have that many artifacts in one course. It seems like a lot of work for a capstone course, but in terms of assessment, whenever we had, I can tell you just in the past for assessment, when I first came here, when we had one artifact and 3 learning outcomes aligned to it, it just didn't work. The scores for that artifact were all very low because it couldn't do that work. It would have, like, let's say there was an analytic rubric for each of those. It would have like 1 row on one of the rubrics, 1 row on one of the other rubrics, and 1 row on one of the other rubrics. So the scores were really low, and it wasn't really fair representation of the student learning. I would hope that if one of the learning, that said, if one of the learning outcomes was writing, there could be a way that we could sit down and think about a coherent way to put writing. Maybe we could, if this is a really important issue because both yourself and David are bringing this up, maybe what I could do is sit down and think about writing, leadership, and applying Franciscan values. Those are the 3. And maybe we could, I don't know how this would sound to you guys, but maybe we could come up with ideas of like a signature assignment. And the purpose wouldn't be to take freedom away from faculty, but the purpose could be to give guidance on how people could perhaps combine some of these learning outcomes into one assignment. Where it would be accessible. Like maybe I would have to sit down and take a look at the elements of these learning outcomes and see how they could be combined, and maybe sitting down with a few faculty who teach capstone and trying to do it. Does that sound like a reasonable idea?
I think so, Carol. I don't mind the 3 outcomes, but as an instructor, to get meaningful artifacts with meaningful assessment data, it can be challenging. So I just think there needs to be a discussion about that.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. I wouldn't have wanted to design something with 3 artifacts in one class. I think that's too much. I think it's demanding too much. But seeing as that's what we have now, maybe we can maybe we could design. Maybe we don't need to call it a signature artifact. It's usually an artifact that kind of fits this place, but maybe we don't have to call that because a signature artifact is usually one that's sort of adopted by people unanimously. So maybe we don't need to call it that. Maybe we could just call it like a suggested artifact. And that way we can help troubleshoot for people. This is really helpful. Thank you. And I would like to work on it with faculty because I think the faculty know what it's like, what their assignments are like in their classes. Okay. This is really good feedback.
Yeah, I agree, Carol. It would be interesting or helpful for me to sit down with other people that are teaching their capstones.
Yeah.
But we can move on. We don't have to focus on capstone, but that is just what I was thinking.
Yeah. So does anybody who's teaching Engage, does this help? Or even just applying Franciscan values?
I teach Engage. It's Nikki from First Year Advising. Sorry, I couldn't say hi earlier. I was walking across campus and had you on the phone. But yeah, this is very helpful. I actually started putting together a rubric, so no questions right now, but I will bring them up if I run into any.
Okay, great. Yeah, I love that question because I was like, yeah, this is really good. I worked on this yesterday. And then I did the same thing for leadership and collaboration to build community, because that's the other learning outcome I think it's is it the other learning outcome in Engage? Either that or it was in, either that or it popped up in, I also tried to work on Capstone.
It's an Engage.
It's an Engage. Okay, it's an Engage and Capstone. So the three things in it are demonstrate leadership, demonstrate collaboration, and then use leadership and collaboration to build community. And the hardest part of this is that community is not really defined. Do they mean the internal community of the classroom? Do they mean the external community? Like, is that the service project again? Or if that's the case, how is a student expected to be developing that community? Like, they are working in the community. So I put a call into the past GE director to see if they could help give us a sense of like what that they were looking for when they wrote the learning outcome. But I proceeded with the work, and the first element is students will understand leadership skills and behaviors, and they will demonstrate some of them to some moderate level of proficiency. So I guess I'm thinking about Engage here. And then if we were thinking about Capstone, maybe they're developing at a higher level of proficiency. And then element 2, students will understand collaboration skills and behaviors, and they will demonstrate some of them to some moderate level of proficiency. So this is more the cognitive realm of Bloom's taxonomy. And then element 3, students will engage some form of work, either conceptual or practical, that addresses the building of a community. They will understand what elements of community building, what they are. They will reference leadership and collaboration skills in reference to community building. So I kind of, I thought the idea of asking a student to build community might be hard, but perhaps they could, in a conceptual paper, they could address it. You know, they could, I don't know how, I think I'll need help with this one too, working with faculty. But I thought, well, you know, they could write, well, you know, theoretically, if one were to build community, one could use the skills of this. One could use the skills from collaboration of this. You know, they could write about it theoretically without having to go out in the world and be expected to actually do this. That might be more reasonable of a project to ask them to do. Or they could talk about community building in their classroom. I mean, it's up to the faculty member what they think is reasonable, but that's what I came up with. And then I thought, well, it could again be a reflection. It could be a paper. It could be a presentation. And then I said, well, to help this out a little, I made this little chart of leadership, collaboration, and community building skills, what those look like. And believe me, these skills are just sample skills. You could find many other and more skills that fall under these buckets. This is by no means an exhaustive list. It's just a beginning. And a lot of the skills for leadership and collaboration are really very similar. It's just in somewhat different amounts. So for leadership, contribute knowledge and abilities, goal achievement, develop a shared vision with others, support others. Here, leadership, communicate clearly about roles and expectations, deliverables, delegate, empowerment, values. And then collaboration is it's a lot about the same. But I'll let you read through that yourself. And then community building, I didn't know if it's building I didn't know if it's building an internal community or building an external community, but it seemed to be a lot about teamwork skills, but also it could be communication skills, networking, it could be basic interpersonal skills. So this community building could be defined very differently based on what the faculty member wants to focus on. So I think if we were, when we're building the rubric for that, I do believe that aspect of it will be very broad. I think that will be, I don't know, I'm sure that others will work on the rubric with me, but I can see that community building will probably be kind of broad. Do you have any feedback for me on this? Okay. I'll keep going. This one is a little bit easier. Demonstrate digital and information literacy to make informed decisions. I started to try to make something different about this, and all I did was I took the last row of the rubric and literally placed it here on this page because I couldn't say it any better than the last row of the rubric said it. I was going to adapt the content, and it said it better in the rubric. So the information. So basically, what I'm saying is that if you look at the rubrics here, I know this doesn't look like a very good, easy to read text, but if you look at the rubric and you look at the capstone level, this describes what a really good artifact at the highest level would look like. So at the capstone, if you're teaching the capstone, this is what you would write your assignment to if you wanted it to be aligned to the rubric. So I placed it there.
So essentially, what you're saying is that all these sample we call them the team that we have created a while ago is to integrate them into assessments and then for the various disciplines.
Yeah, for the general education. This is for general education. So this is just for the art. People are teaching in a variety of disciplines.
Yeah.
But the artifacts that are contributed to the general education assessment come out of those variety of disciplines, and they're aligned to the rubric from general education. And then we're assessing that to see what the learning looks like for these general education outcomes. But the beauty of it is that it is coming from all these different disciplines. So the artifacts all look really different. They're the thing that you're not, this sounds like this is such a technical workshop, but the thing that you're not seeing that the evaluators and I get to see is the lovely expanse of creativity that all the different faculty members have with the sorts of artifacts that come out of their classes that answer these things about leadership or about writing or about the values. They're all really different, coming from the different faculty members' classes and the different disciplines. They show such a variety and creativity and uniqueness, and they're inspiring, and they're really enjoyable to review. And they're all different, and so we're never trying to take away that unique inspiration that each faculty member has when approaching these. You know,
A quick question.
Yeah.
So one of my students, I taught sociology, and one of the those value, one of them applied to it. And the final paper, I got some feedback from students that is a little bit lengthy. I'm just curious because I kind of model mine with the one Gary is teaching online. So is this something that both instructors have to agree on a page limit number, or is it really left out to the instructor to set it up?
Well, it's left to the instructor. We do have guidelines that good artifacts for GE assessment, and it's just a practical guideline. We like them to be about 3 pages to 5 pages because if you look at you see the rubrics that I showed you, like you can sense that 1 page, there's no way you're going to get that much material. And if I show you, if I read for you what this says, I'll just take one of these. A variety of information sources appropriate to the scope and discipline of the research question are chosen. Multiple criteria evaluated critically, including relevance to the research question, currency, authority, audience, and bias. I mean, how are you going to do that in a one-page paper? Not to mention the other three things. So the student will need a little bit of time to define their research question, to start to bring sources into it, to start to evaluate it critically, and to start to use information to accomplish a purpose. They're going to need a little bit of time to develop their ideas. And then, you know, probably they're writing it well, so they're going to have like a topic, a main introductory paragraph and a conclusion paragraph. And so probably, you know, the minimum will be 3 pages. And then, but the evaluators, they don't greatly enjoy reading 20-page papers. Now, if a larger artifact is loaded in there because that's the paper for the course, we're fine. Like we can, it's not a problem. They can stop evaluating after 6 pages because they've got what they need. You know what I mean? Like that is to say, if they've got the high score that they think that they needed, otherwise they're going to have to keep reading until they see better competency. You know what I mean? It's kind of touch and go, but
I agree with you. The minimum actually we asking them 5.5.
Yeah.
So
that's not that bad.
No,
It's
I
not that
agree.
bad. They need their time to develop. It's much more common that we see things that are not of enough development than of too much development. So I can tell you, like, we're not going to complain about somebody giving us a 6-page paper. We'll be very, very happy with it. So that brings us to this really nice slide that they can't, you know, artifacts can be tests. They can be short answer essay tests. Those can actually work. If there's enough of those sections of those essay tests, like there's 5 of them together that we can see, they can work. And we've had really great work with science projects, you know, there's multiple pages to a science project, like there's 5 pages and we upload them all and we look at them all together. Those work really great. They don't all have to be papers. We love looking at the art projects. There's, you know, the variety that we see, we love seeing. The only things that don't work so well is if it's like a multiple choice test where we don't see the students' work and thought process through it. Because as you can see, a lot of this, unless it's a math artifact. And the reason, you know, literature reviews can work as long as we can see some thought and analysis in it. So I hope that this slide is helpful. That's just about labeling. Okay, somebody had asked about ways to bring adapt your teaching to the Franciscan values. So I'm sure that other faculty, the first thing is that other faculty members in your department and across the university have done this really, really well. So those are going to be actually the best people to ask. But these are some ideas. You can read about Francis and Claire and the movement they founded. Golly's book is a good beginning. There's probably still a few copies somewhere of it. It's a little colorful book. There's this link is live to Sister Anita's Catholic Social Teaching page. It's a wealth of resources. On being a Franciscan faculty member, I think every one of us has read it upon entry, but it's a kind of good thing to I go back and read it every once in a while. I would say reflect on what the values mean to you and where do you see them on campus being enacted, and reflect on how they might shape the way that you approach working with others and teaching and working with students. I think that that sitting down and writing and thinking about how they affect you and what you might change about your approach would be a really, really helpful experience for you. And then you could also think about if you wanted to change some content, like a certain project, you wanted to have the project be adapted to reflect the values. There's other faculty have done this, and you you can talk to them about how they've done it, and you can try it yourself. And then finally, there's God's Extravagant Love. It's not offered this fall, but it's offered really pretty regularly by Trish Bagayski and Sister Anita. And do other people have ideas? The little kitty's tired. Everybody's tired, huh? Maybe they had to go.
Those are really good, Carol.
Where can we find those options you were showing?
The
slide before the two. Go back to some
those documents?
The examples you provided
Those are live links. You just click on them. So you could just search. You go into Mike Hoover Connection docs and search on being a Franciscan faculty member, or search Catholic social teaching, and it'll bring it up for you. But these are all live links. Sister Anita did this. It's beautiful. I mean, you can read. I don't know if you can read about the Catechism of the Holy Church. This thing is enormous.
hard copy.
You have of course she has a hard copy. And this thing, I love this thing. It's funny. It's actually funny. You just got to click on the links. Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's shared with all incoming faculty members, but it's good to review. Well, I think that's enough of your time for right now, but we're going to send you out a post assessment so that you can tell us what you want more of or what you still have questions about. And I want to thank you so much for your feedback. And I love the idea about trying to get together some faculty to try to work on suggested artifacts so that we can make those learning outcomes for capstone, maybe make it be something that we can get into one good artifact or maybe two good artifacts, maybe. No, it's okay. I got a mic on. Thanks, Godwin. Godwin's looking out for me. Does anybody have any final closing thoughts? I don't want to cut you off.
One final thought, maybe, Carol, is about the timing for collection.
Yes.
So that, we're in fall of 23, planning to collect. Is collection taking place in the spring as some of them are listed? So if someone's got a class that's running only in one of the semesters and it needs to be running in the other semester, or they haven't been collecting from it in a certain semester, they need to make adjustments. What's the timeline?
So the collection is sort of, it's more like a continuum. So I can go into Canvas. What I do is I set up my spreadsheet and I go back a few years. I go back a few years and I set up like fall. I go back to like fall of 20. I go like fall 20, spring 21, summer 21, you get the idea. And I list it out, and then I list out the courses and the sections, and then I go and I start pulling what I can.
Carol, are you pulling from, so let's say on the SharePoint right now, it says assessment year for Franciscan Tradition 2023 December. Are you pulling fall 23 as the assessment item? Are you pulling spring 23 as the assessment item? Because what if those assessments haven't been taken when you're, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
I'm pulling them both, but I can see when the assignments due. So like, let's say don't worry about it if, let's say your assignment isn't due until December 9th. And it's in the same semester. I can make a little note, assignment due December 9th, and then I can go in there after December 9th and pull it. But I can pull from the semester before or the year before if if I need more artifacts. I try to get the most current artifacts because I think that they might be more likely to be aligned, but I can go back terms as well. And I can make note of when the artifacts are coming in. Did that answer it?
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, especially with maybe some of the rubrics changing since the last cycle when a certain, outcome was assessed. And I'm thinking with regard to capstone, the information digital literacy versus the writing and speaking, and so, that having a formalized rubric, whereas the others had previous rubrics but now don't have a formalized rubric any longer.
Right. It's better to do the more recent. Yeah, it's usually not a problem to pull from the same semester that we're assessing that artifact from, because the artifacts are, the way that it happens is the evaluation happens after the term is over. Well, thank you, everyone. This has been really productive and helpful for me, at least, and I hope it's been somewhat helpful for you as well. I wish you all a happy week.